Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the leading employee benefits and engagement platform.
Despite a health crisis and one of the worst economic downturns in history, the number of new businesses increased in the United States last year. Turkey and the United Kingdom also saw an increase in the number of new entrepreneurs and freelancers in the market. So what does this mean for HR and organizations? Hi everyone, this is Sushmita from Vantage HR Influencers podcast, and to discuss about the next boom for entrepreneurs and freelancers and what it means for HR, today I have with me guest speaker Amy Smith, who is a business and LinkedIn strategist, helping service-based business owners to launch and grow their businesses online. Let's get started. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me here, Susmita.
Okay, so Amy, could you please begin by introducing yourselves to our audience today?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Amy Smith. I'm the founder of Aligned Tribe and run amylsmith.com. And I guess primarily I work with people in the HR space that are making the leap into entrepreneurship. And so my background is in HR, and I very much help them to build their brand and build their business using LinkedIn.
Okay. So, Amy, coming to our topic today, that is about the next boom for entrepreneurs and freelancers and what it means for HR, right? So we have been hearing so much about the freelance economy lately, and it has been predicted that it will become a multi-trillion-dollar industry in the near future. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, it has exploded in the last few years. I think it's even up 22% from 2019. And there's a few different, factors at play there. But primarily, I think people are really looking for more flexible work options. And I think freelancing is such a great way for, employees to be able to access the gig economy and actually have some, maybe create a side hustle or be able to use their skills from a freelancing perspective. And then I think for business owners and for companies, to be able to leverage people's skills globally and to be able to have that kind of flexibility around, the types of project style work and the engagements that you can create through the freelance economy, I think is huge. And I don't think the trend is going backwards. If anything, we'll see it really accelerate even more so in the next couple of years.
Okay. So, I also read in a new research from the massive freelance and network, Upwork. Independent professionals are likely to be in higher demand in the future, with 47% of hiring managers now likely to employ independent professionals during the COVID-19 crisis. So this approach could result in a gainful employment opportunities for many, of course, and companies will also benefit from this. So do you believe that the freelance economy is a win-win model? And if so, why?
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, I think it definitely is. And I think the research is there as well to show that, you just mentioned there, the percentage of HR people and companies that are actually really open to this model of working now. I think there's been a real shift in the perception of remote work and what that means and the way it's being used in companies. So I remember even a couple of years ago, I was brought in to consult with a large education company here in Australia to help them with their leadership and management programs. And I remember talking to one of the managers as part of that program, and he sort of came up to me and said that, one of his staff members, who just so happened to be a millennial, was asking to work remotely and work from home. Now, this is going back, 2 or 3 years, so pre-COVID, right? And this manager was sort of saying that, he didn't actually think that you could work and be productive unless he could actually physically see you in the office. And so I think now with COVID, and I think with other things that are happening and shifting in the dynamics of the workplace, I think people's perceptions have really changed to know that, just because someone is working remotely, or if you are engaging a freelancer on a contract basis or a project basis, that it doesn't necessarily mean that the work's not going to get done. If anything, it can actually get done a lot more productively and a lot more cost efficiently for the organization as well.
Mm-hmm. So then what are the catalysts for this change in people's working preferences? Is it due to the changing economic conditions because of the crisis, or are there any other significant factors at play?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different moving parts. It's kind of like the perfect storm, right? We've had, COVID is probably the most obvious one that's happened recently. And, it's kind of like been this huge change management experience, if you like, where, I think we've had probably around 5 years of change happen within 5 weeks when it came to COVID. So there was that instant need to adapt by organizations with COVID. But I think if we put COVID to one side and we look around, the dynamics of the workplace and how that's evolving, you've got the generational shift that's now moving through the workplace as well. So right now we have around 40% of the workplace I know based in Australia is millennials, and 10% of the workplace is Generation Z. Right. Now, for that group, they strive for flexibility and they strive for a work-life balance. And so I think, having such a high percentage of younger leaders in the workplace moving through is putting a lot of pressure on, businesses needing to be more flexible and the want and need for individuals to work more flexibly as well. And so naturally, people do head to the freelance marketplace, whether they're looking for work or whether they're looking to employ someone. And I think the other factor as well that has kind of made this all a perfect storm in the times we're in is just the use of technology and the fact that we're actually enabled to work differently and to work flexibly. And, as a freelancer, for example, to be in control of your own hours, to be able to, take payments from a client very efficiently using technology, to have the communication tools available as well. So I think there's a huge different array of factors that have all kind of come together and that have really accelerated this industry.
So how far have you progressed in this journey for change? Like, are businesses deliberately looking to the freelance economy to meet their needs now?
Yeah, I think they definitely are. I think, like I said before, just the mindset and the perception around the freelance economy and actually tapping into that is very real, and it's sort of shifted over the years as well. And I think when it comes to looking at it from a talent side of things, businesses sometimes don't have a choice. There's a real lack of talent sometimes locally in people's different areas. And when you look at the location restrictions around having to turn up to work and be sitting in an office and doing the traditional full-time 9 to 5, that model is actually becoming more and more outdated in the workplace. And so I think there's a real shift around the way we imagine roles and the way that work is actually performed. And so I think that's only going to be accelerated as we move forward as well.
Yeah. So, so we accept this, that the freelance economy is now, playing a great role in the companies now. So what about when we talk about, like, we are a Vantage Circle is a employee engagement company. So employee engagement or employee experience is a very, hot topic nowadays. So how does the freelance economy affect these terms, employee engagement and employee experience?
It's huge because, businesses now and organizations now, employee engagement and employee retention and being able to attract new talent, all of it is so, so important. And particularly the engagement side of things. I read actually Deloitte put out a study not too long ago where it actually said that 2/3 of millennials that are already in their jobs, they're working full time, are actually thinking about starting their own business. And so for businesses and for organizations, if they're not able to harness that generation as an example, this goes across the board, across generations as well, but it's moved from actually being able to just engage people in the work that they're doing to now engaging them to actually come to work and work for a boss rather than working for themselves. So not only does the companies now, and organizations have to focus on, stopping someone from maybe moving across and getting a job with another competitor or a different industry, they actually have to engage them in a way which stops them from heading out there and starting up their own side hustle or starting up their own business. So it's hugely important and will be moving forward as well.
Yeah, that means it's still, employee engagement still has its role in the freelance economy, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because, the bigger problem that starts to happen as well is now you have so many moving parts. So if you're a manager within an organization, you might have, say, for instance, 10 team members that you're responsible for and that you're managing. And, 4 of those team members might be freelancers and might be working, contracts and different hours, and there's different KPIs and there's different expectations and all of those sorts of things. And there's also, you need to be able to connect them to the people that, do have full-time permanent positions. And I think more and more so, there's less of a separation, and there should be less of a separation between, there's no difference between someone working for you as a freelancer or someone working for you on a contract basis versus a full-time permanent staff member. So to actually get that engagement quite cohesive amongst the team, it's growing in complexity just due to the nature and the styles of working.
Right. Great. Okay. So coming next to our, the part of entrepreneurship. So there is no doubt that coronavirus pandemic has had a negative impact on the current economy. While the decrease in GDP and the rise in unemployment rate demonstrates the negative effects of coronavirus, it has had one positive impact on the economy, and that is an increase in entrepreneurs. So as I read in a research paper, the US is currently undergoing a startup boom, as some refer to. And probably that's right, because despite a raging pandemic and a dreadful recession, America is experiencing a surge in new business growth. So do you believe that people are taking entrepreneurship as a necessity or an opportunity?
I think it's likely a bit of both as well. I think there's always people that step into entrepreneurship. I know for me, going back in my career, I always kind of had that entrepreneurial fire in my belly. And it was just about, I guess, taking those steps and starting before you're ready to really make that leap. But I also think that now people have realized that there might not be the kind of job security that there once was. And so I think, if anything, COVID has really taught people to reassess where they're at and to really think about, is this the kind of work-life balance? Is this the kind of money I want to make? Is this the kind of environment I want to be in? And it's really kind of hit the reset button for a lot of people. So I think for some people, yes, maybe if they lost their jobs, it became a necessity. So, becoming a freelancer and being able to utilize your skills and get, paid for that is awesome to be able to do. It's very, very great that you can actually do that these days. And then I think, for others that are looking at starting a business, this is a real opportune time where there is that flexibility and there's that change in thinking. And I think organizations should be and are becoming a little bit more open-minded to, how to help people maybe have the best of both worlds, where they can have a side hustle and a business at the same time, working for them. So I think, there's definitely that bridge there where it is very, very appealing for a lot of people to, start working in their own business or as a freelancer, because they've already sort of convinced themselves that it can be done. They can work differently.
So you believe that it is this pandemic situation can be a right time, or is the right time to take up a new business opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime in business, it's going to be tough starting out. So, when you're starting something new, there's actually, when it comes to, recessions and things, if we think back to the GFC, some of the biggest and best businesses were born during that time. So it's an opportunity where, yes, there's plenty of negatives to look at as well, but there's also plenty of positives that come out from it too. And so I think it does help people to reimagine things, and it does help people get a little bit creative and resourceful in the way that they do things. And I think they're really, really good traits of an entrepreneur. And I think there's, where you can see new problems arising, then, a great entrepreneur or a great business owner will look at those new problems and think, well, how can I solve that? There's new market demands that is created sometimes that didn't exist before. So I think there's always opportunity out there if you look for it.
Okay, great. So what is the impact of rising entrepreneurship and freelancers on human resources and companies that you believe?
Yeah, look, it's a tricky one, right? Because, it really does come down to being able to attract, engage, and retain your workforce. And it's shifting from, I think for HR departments, traditionally there's been that very much a compliance focus where, you follow the rules and you have to dot the I's and cross the T's. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think for HR to be able to perform effectively as a department moving forward in years to come with these shifts that are happening in the workplace, HR departments really need to put on their innovation hat to keep up. Because if they're not at the forefront of what their employees are thinking, what their employees are doing, where their employees want to be, how to actually engage them in a way that, enhances their professional life as well as their personal life, because we have this whole, work-life integration approach now. So if HR departments aren't able to effectively do that within businesses and companies and very much have a strong brand and a strong culture that people want to be a part of and will choose to be a part of over being their own boss or having, ultimate levels of flexibility in their own business, then they're really going to struggle moving forward because really, the future of work, we hear about, robots stealing people's jobs and all these sorts of things. But, the future of work, the reality is it's already here. So I think sometimes in some cases, HR departments can be a little bit on the back foot, whereas, the changes and how fast things are moving now requires them to really get a wriggle on and become more innovative.
Okay, so are there any other challenges that the HR departments are facing right now, or how are they, rethinking their roles?
Yeah, I think you just said it there perfectly, was just rethinking their roles, moving from the compliance focus to then more of an innovative focus. It really does take you to think differently. And also, within departments, like I know working in HR sometimes when it comes to recruitment, as an example, if someone leaves an organization and then you're looking to replace that person, in that same job, the natural instinct is just to pick up that old job description that you've had there for the last 5-10 years and then just go out and look for someone that matches that description. And what it will be required and is required now is for HR departments to build a really strong employer brand and work with the marketing team to do that, to be visible online so that people are attracted to working with them, and actually rethinking and reimagining these roles so that you don't just dust off a job description from 5 years ago and say, that will do, let's find this person. Right. You actually need to think about, how are you going to attract, the new type of worker? How are you going to be able to, create this role and maybe look at, does it work? Do you work 2 days a week from home and then the rest in the office? Or, is it full time from the office? And just really thinking about mixing things up to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's basically like not only rethinking their own roles, but the other people's role as well, right, in the organization.
Absolutely. And stepping up as the leaders as well, from the department. I think for years, HR has always said that they want a seat at the table when it comes to, being in the boardrooms and being able to make real business decisions. So I think the more that HR departments can connect themselves with the vision of the business and the business strategy, then it's actually going to be much more effective than, what some HR departments are right now, if they're only focused on compliance, right? And I say that, but there are some great companies, great organizations out there that their HR teams are at the cutting edge of business. So it's really a varying scale, but I think it does take reimagining what the role of the whole HR department is, and then also how that flows down and how that trickles down to other roles within the business as well.
Great. Okay, so what would be your suggestions for our HR listeners?
Yeah, so for HR listeners here, I think something that's, really important is to really focus and look on the trends of where things are going rather than just thinking about the day-to-day as well, because it's so easy sometimes just to get stuck in the business as usual, and you're there and you're fighting fires and you're trying to deal with situations week by week or day by day, or even meetings hour by hour. And so I think sometimes it takes you to remove yourself, from the environment even, or just to have a day where you're doing some strategic thinking, or you're doing some visionary thinking about, if things were different, how could they be different? And really looking at yourself as a leader within the organization to, help build an online presence and the visibility of the culture of the brand, so that you can showcase it to, future employees and build a great talent pipeline. And, there's all of these sorts of things that, do take you getting very comfortable in new technologies and new ways of working. So I think for HR departments and people that work in HR, it's just awesome to be able to step out of the day-to-day and business as usual and just start to think a little bit more creatively.
Okay, amazing. So finally, how can our listeners reach out to you, Amy?
Thank you for having me. You are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. Is probably a place that I play the most. So you can find me at Amy L. Smith Coach on LinkedIn. You can also find me at amylsmith.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at Amy L. Smith as well.
Okay. We'll put that up in the show notes for the podcast. That was great talking to you, Amy. Wish you all the best for your future. And thanks a lot for joining me in the Vantage HR Influencers podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Vantage HR Influencers podcast, where we engage with HR influencers about human resources. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for new episodes.